President Joe Biden met with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelenskyy to get an update on the incident at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant and asked Russia to end its military operations in the area and give emergency responders access. Welcome to War Zone. If you don't want to miss out on any new political news, conflicts, battles, or anything else related to politics, then subscribe to our channel and hit the bell button so that you will always be notified. On Saturday, U.S. President Joe Biden argued that the Third World War might be a better option to the sanctions Washington has imposed on Russia. There are two possibilities available to you: start a Third World War and physically go to war with Russia. In an interview with blogger Brian Tyler Cohen, Biden said, or two, make sure that the government that behaves so counter to international law pays a price for it. Meanwhile, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has stated that the sanction strategy is aimed at eradicating Russia as a rival and is resulting in a new world war. Russia is on the verge of a third world war. We should be wary of it and stay away from it, because nuclear war would be the end of the world, Lukashenko declared on Sunday, according to TASS. He claimed that the Western countries' harsh sanctions are worse than war. We should be aware that such sanctions exist in a circumstance like this. The banking industry has received a lot of attention. SWIFT. It's a lot worse than going to war. This is the issue they're trying to solve. They've gone to war, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko remarked. No sanctions are being imposed right now, according to the U.S. president. However, I believe that these penalties, as far as I am aware, are the largest sanctions in history, including both economic and political sanctions, Biden said. Russia will pay a high price for this in the short and long term, especially in the long term, the U.S. president stated. Lukashenko warned that Minsk and Moscow would retaliate against the West with severe penalties. Our sanctions, which Russia and Belarus will face, will be severe. These mechanisms have already begun to function. If necessary, we will strengthen these measures, but not to our harm, Belarus's president added. Another Iron Curtain was ready to collapse, he warned. In a televised address on February 24th, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that in response to a request from the heads of the Donbas republics, he had decided to launch a special military operation to protect people who have been subjected to abuse and genocide by the Kyiv regime for the past 8 years. The Russian president stated emphatically that Moscow had no intention of invading Ukrainian territory. Its goal is for the country to be demilitarized and denazified. When asked to describe the current situation, the Russian Defense Ministry stated that Russian troops are limited to surgically destroying and incapacitating Ukrainian military facilities rather than attacking Ukrainian cities. The civilian population is not threatened in any way. A number of countries, notably the U.S., have imposed severe sanctions on Russia. Russian President Vladimir Putin, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, and Chief of General Staff Valery Gerasimov have all been sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department. Nearly a week after Russian President Vladimir Putin announced the start of a military action in Ukraine, Kharkiv, the country's second-largest city, has been heavily bombarded as the UN condemned Russia's invasion. The largest attack on a European state since 1945 has resulted in almost 870,000 people fleeing, a torrent of sanctions against Russia, and worries of a wider battle in the West that hasn't been imagined in decades. Meanwhile, according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's military advisor, over 7,000 Russian servicemen have been killed since Russia's invasion of Ukraine began, and hundreds have been taken prisoner, including top officials. For the first time since the invasion began, Russia has disclosed military casualties, stating that about 500 of its troops have been killed and almost 1,600 have been injured. According to Ukraine's state emergency organization, at least 22 civilians were killed in a Russian hit on a residential area in Chernihiv, a city of 280,000 people in the country's north. According to the report, the death toll could rise as rescuers continue to search the debris for more corpses. Even as talks between Russia and Ukraine are taking place in Belarus, this development occurred. In the wake of a rising civilian death toll and widespread property devastation during Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has begun an investigation that could target senior authorities suspected of war crimes, crimes against humanity, or genocide. ICC prosecutor Karim Khan announced the investigation late Wednesday night after dozens of member states of the International Criminal Court begged him to do so. Our work in the collection of evidence has now begun, Khan said after telling the court's judges of his intention to open a probe into both sides of the incident. Between March 2 to 3, Russian shelling and strikes on civilian populations killed 34 citizens in Ukraine's eastern Kharkiv region, according to emergency services. Separately, the governor of Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region stated the port city of Mariupol, which was one of the first objectives of Russia's assault, was without power and water. On Wednesday, 141 of the United Nations' 193 members voted in favor of a resolution reprimanding Moscow, a symbolic success for Ukraine that extends Moscow's worldwide isolation. After the vote, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken told reporters, "More is at stake even than the crisis in Ukraine itself. This endangers Europe's security as well as the entire rules-based order." India voted no on the resolution, stating that the only way to address issues is via communication and diplomacy. The Indian government responded to Russia's assertions that Indian students are being kept captive in Ukraine on Thursday, stating that it was in constant contact with all nations and had not yet received any such complaint. "We have not received any reports of any student being held hostage. We have requested assistance from Ukrainian authorities in preparing special trains to transport students from Kharkiv and neighboring districts to the western portion of the nation," said Arindam Bagchi, a spokesperson for the Ministry of External Affairs. According to senior Biden administration officials and a European official, senior Chinese officials advised senior Russian officials in early February not to invade Ukraine before the end of the Winter Olympics in Beijing, according to a Western intelligence report. According to Deutsche Welle, Ukraine and Russia are set to begin a new round of peace negotiations on Thursday. The Russian group was waiting in southwestern Belarus on Wednesday, according to Russia's senior negotiator Vladimir Medinsky, while Ukrainian delegates were on their way. Medinsky reportedly said that Russian forces established a safety lane for Ukrainian delegations, according to Rossiya 24. The ceasefire discussions are anticipated to take place. On Monday, the two sides held their first round of negotiations, but no concrete progress was made. On Wednesday, Russian soldiers besieged two strategic Ukrainian seaports and intensified their assault on the country's second-largest city, while the massive armored column attacking Kyiv looked to be stuck outside the capital. Russia has stated that the Western sanctions against it will have no effect on the supply of S-400 missile systems to India. Russian ambassador-designate Denis Alipov also mentioned a bilateral system for doing commerce in national currencies during a press conference. By the seventh day of Russia's assault, the UN projected that 1 million refugees had fled Ukraine to neighboring countries, such as Poland and Hungary. According to the Associated Press, the UN's figure represents more than 2% of Ukraine's population, which was estimated by the World Bank to be 44 million at the end of 2020. According to the international organization's forecasts, almost 4 million more individuals may depart the country. The White House announced new sanctions Thursday aimed at people in Putin's inner circle. Earlier this week, the U.S. announced sanctions against Russia and Belarus, including export controls aimed at Russia's oil industry. The U.S. joined Europe and Canada in closing its airspace to Russian airlines. A growing number of the world's best-known brands, from Apple to Mercedes-Benz and BP, are to pull out of Russia. German Volkswagen Group decided to halt its business activities in Russia, including that of subsidiary Skoda Auto, which is halting car production in its two Russian plants and all exports to Russia. Similarly, Swedish furniture retailer IKEA says it's closing its operations in Russia, pausing all export and import in and out of Russia and Belarus, a decision that will have a direct impact on 15,000 IKEA co-workers. The sanctions threaten ultra-wealthy Russians who own properties across Europe and send their children to elite European private schools. Some have begun, albeit tentatively, to speak out. French authorities said they seized a yacht linked to Igor Sechin, a Putin ally who runs Russian oil giant Rosneft, as part of EU sanctions over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Britain slapped sanctions on two more Russians it says are linked to the Kremlin, cutting them off from properties and interest in the UK. The government says Alisher Usmanov and Igor Shuvalov are worth a combined $19 billion. The U.S. State Department also said Thursday it was imposing visa bans on 19 Russian oligarchs and dozens of their family members and associates. The Justice Department previously announced a new initiative to go after Russian oligarchs. Russian billionaire Roman Abramovich confirmed Wednesday he's trying to sell the Premier League Chelsea soccer club with a price tag of at least $2.5 billion floated. He said net proceeds from the sale will be donated to benefit victims of the war. Alright everyone, this brings us to the end of our video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Until then, take care, and we will be back with another video.